4 seconds. That is how long a male tiger needs to press his nose against a patch of scraped earth and know something no human nose could ever detect. A female tiger, somewhere inside his territory, will be ready to mate within the next few days. His upper lip curls back, his teeth show, his eyes narrow to slits. For a moment, he looks like he is snarling at nothing. He is not angry. He is reading a message written in a language with no sound and no picture, only molecules. That grimace has a name, the flamen response. It looks like aggression, but it is closer to a scan. And what it tells the tiger is not vague. It is close to an exact countdown to the only few days out of every several weeks when conception is even possible. This is the story of how a solitary, territorial predator that actively avoids other tigers for most of its life finds the one that does not want to be avoided, at the one moment when timing decides everything. By the end of this video, you will understand how a tiger can smell a date on a calendar that does not exist, and why getting that timing wrong can end in violence instead of offspring. A tiger's world is built on distance. An adult male in central India or Nepal's Chitwan Valley can hold a territory of 60 to 100 square kilometers, overlapping the smaller ranges of 2 or 3 females, each about 15 to 20 square kilometers. He rarely sees any of them. Tigers are not pack animals. They are not even loosely social like lions. A male and a female tiger who are not mating actively avoid each other's company, and a chance meeting outside the mating window is as likely to end in a serious fight as in anything resembling courtship. So the entire species solves a problem that would cripple most social animals. How do you coordinate reproduction between two individuals who spend 90% of their lives making sure they never cross paths? The tiger's answer is chemical. Scent marks, sprayed onto trees and rock faces at nose height, scraped into the ground with hind claws, deposited every few hundred meters along regular travel routes, are not simply territorial graffiti. They are dated, signed, and hormonally annotated messages, refreshed constantly, left for whoever passes next. Indian biochemist Ranjan Lal Brahmachari spent decades trying to identify exactly what was in that message. Working with wild and captive Bengal tigers, he found that a single scent mark can carry more than 40 distinct chemical compounds, a mixture he called simply marking fluid. The blend shifts with the animal's hormonal state, and a receptive female's mark is chemically distinct from her own scent on any other day of the month. In 2016, researchers Simone Soso and Jacek Koziel at Iowa State University ran Siberian tiger marking fluid through a gas chromatograph paired with a human sniff panel, isolating 32 separate volatile compounds. One molecule, 2-acetyl-1-pyrroline, the same compound that gives fresh bread its smell, turned out to be the tiger's chemical signature. Present in every sample tested and shifting in concentration with reproductive hormones. A tiger does not smell one thing. It reads a chord of dozens of notes at once. And one of those notes reports, with something close to hormonal precision, whether the animal that left the mark is fertile this week. The instrument that does the reading sits in the roof of a tiger's mouth, the vomeronasal organ, sometimes called Jacobson's organ, a paired chemical sensor unconnected to the ordinary sense of smell running through the nose. The flamen grimace is not decoration. Curling the upper lip and holding the mouth slightly open physically opens a duct that channels air and whatever is dissolved in it directly onto that organ. George Schaller, whose 1967 study of Bengal tigers in India's Kanha National Park became one of the first systematic accounts of tiger behavior, described tigers stopping mid-stride at a fresh scrape mark, sniffing, then grimacing for several seconds afterward, as if the message needed time to be fully absorbed. Before Schaller's fieldwork, that grimace confused the naturalists who bothered to record it at all. 19th and early 20th century hunters and colonial-era observers who saw a tiger curl its lip over a scent mark generally filed it under threat display or disgust, the same category as a snarl before a charge, because it resembled one closely enough, and because almost no one was watching long enough, or closely enough, to notice that it happened only at scent marks and never during an actual confrontation. The behavior had been misread as aggression for so long that some regional field guides into the mid-20th century still described it that way. It took controlled observation of captive cats, later extended to wild tigers by Schaller and others, to establish that the grimace was aimed at a smell rather than at a rival, and decades more before Brahmachari's chemistry work explained what the smell actually contained. The window this system is built to detect is narrow. A female tiger cycles into estrus roughly every 3 to 9 weeks, but she is only receptive for 3 to 6 days at a time. Days before that window opens, her marking behavior changes first. She scent marks more frequently, and the composition of her urine shifts, days ahead of any visible or audible sign. This is the first complication built into the whole system. A male who reads last week's mark and sets out to find her is not chasing a certainty. He is chasing a chemical signal that is itself a forecast, decaying in real time. That decay matters more than it sounds. Felinine, a sulfur-containing amino acid derivative found in the urine of most cats and identified as a key structural component of these scent marks, has been shown to persist on a surface for roughly 30 days before breaking down. So a male tracking a scent trail is not just reading a signal, he is dating it, weighing a fresher mark near his own territory against an older, fainter one 3 kilometers north, deciding in real time which lead is worth the walk and which has already gone cold. Weather adds a second layer of noise to that calculation. A scent mark deposited in dry leaf litter under forest canopy can hold its chemical signature for days. The same mark exposed on open ground ahead of monsoon rain can be washed to nothing within hours. A male tiger cannot know from the mark itself whether it is reading a week-old signal that is simply weathered well or a day-old signal that has already been half destroyed. Researchers studying scent persistence in tropical cat species have noted that humidity and rainfall are two of the strongest predictors of how long a chemical message survives on a surface at all. Which means the same female's exact reproductive window can look chemically closer or farther away depending on nothing more than whether it rained the night before. And walking is not free. Crossing into unfamiliar ground to follow a promising scent trail means crossing into another male's territory, where his own marks mean nothing, and someone else's fresher, more aggressive scent lines might already say the female has a suitor closer than he is. Two male tigers converging on the same fading trail, each having read the same forecast a day apart, is one of the few scenarios reliably documented to end in a fight to serious injury or death. The chemical message that starts as an invitation can just as easily become a collision course. Suppose the trail holds and the timing is right. The male still has to survive the meeting itself. Tigers outside the mating window treat a stranger's approach as a threat, and a female in the earliest hours of estrus has not necessarily recalibrated that instinct yet. Wildlife biologists Melvin Sundquist and Fiona Sundquist, who spent years radio-collaring tigers in Nepal's Chitwan National Park, documented courtship as a genuinely tense negotiation rather than a smooth introduction. The pair circle one another at a distance, vocalizing low, repeated moans that are nothing like a hunting roar, closing the gap in stages, breaking off if either animal tenses, starting the approach over. A male who reads the chemistry perfectly can still be driven off by a female who is not, in that exact hour, ready for company. If the pair does accept one another, biology adds a fourth complication that scent alone cannot solve. Female tigers, like most cats, are induced ovulators. An egg is not released on a fixed schedule. It is released in response to the physical stimulation of mating itself, and often only after that stimulation has been repeated. This means one successful pairing is rarely enough. Courting pairs have been documented mating dozens of times within a single day, sometimes reported at close to 50 instances over 24 hours, spaced through the day and night across a courtship period that typically runs 5 to 6 days. Each pairing is genuinely brief, lasting only seconds, but the pattern is relentless, and it is the repetition, not any single instance, that finally triggers ovulation and makes fertilization possible. That relentlessness carries its own cost. For 5 or 6 days, two of the most efficient solitary predators on the planet stop hunting seriously, stay in close proximity to one another rather than ranging across their territory, and become far easier for a rival to locate by scent, sound, and simple presence in one place. Each brief pairing is punctuated by a distinctive vocal exchange, a low growl from the male answered by an aggressive snarl and a swipe from the female as the two separate. Then, a return to close proximity minutes later as though nothing had happened. A pattern repeated so many times across the courtship period that Sundquist's field notes from Chitwan treat the count itself, rather than any single instance, as the meaningful data point. It is, for a strict solitary hunter, an unusually exposed and energetically expensive several days, and it ends the moment conception succeeds, sometimes abruptly. The pair separates. There is no extended partnership, no shared den, no second meeting planned.
Both animals return to solitary ranges, as though the several days together had not changed anything between them. Though for the female, they permanently have. There is a colder edge to this system worth naming plainly. Scent marking does not just advertise the female, it also, unavoidably, advertises information to males who are not her chosen partner. A cub sired by one male and later discovered by a rival who has taken over the mother's territory carries no scent evidence of paternity that would protect it, and infanticide by incoming males, though not universal, has been documented across multiple tiger populations as a consequence of exactly this dynamic. Sundquist's long-term Chitwan data recorded new territory-holding males killing cubs sired by their predecessors, and in the aftermath, the bereaved female returned to estrus within weeks, her scent marks changing again, this time advertising availability to the very male who had just ended her previous litter.
The same chemistry that brings a mating pair together also broadcasts a female's reproductive history to any male capable of reading it, for as long as the traces persist, and it offers her no way to hide that history from a male she would rather avoid. A female already raising cubs adds one more layer of timing to the whole system. Tigresses do not cycle back into estrus while nursing a litter, so for 18 months to 2 years after a successful mating, her scent carries no fertility signal at all, regardless of how many males pass through her range reading for one. A male who remembers a promising trail from a season earlier and returns to the same stretch of forest may find only the flat, uninformative scent of a mother occupied with cubs, a dead end his own memory could not have predicted. The system has no way to broadcast in advance when that dry spell will end, only to announce it, days at a time, once it finally does. For a long time, naturalists assumed a tiger's roar was the primary tool for finding a mate across that landscape. It made intuitive sense. A big cat, a loud sound, carried for kilometers through dense forest, seemed like the obvious signal. Fieldwork has repeatedly shown otherwise. Vocalization plays a real role only in the final stage, once two tigers are already close enough to hear one another, guiding the last approach and courtship exchange. The search itself, across the tens of square kilometers that separate one tiger's range from the next, is conducted almost entirely through smell, deposited days or weeks in advance, and read by an organ most people have never heard of. The roar is the last few meters of a journey that scent chemistry did almost all the work to complete. A second assumption falls apart just as fast, that tiger mating follows a fixed seasonal calendar, the way it does in some cooler climate cats. In India's tropical and subtropical forests, this turns out to be only partly true. Schaller's Kanha data, and later work by Sundquist and John McDougall in Chitwan, both recorded a winter peak in mating activity. But wildlife biologist Ulas Karanth's long-term study in Nagarhole Tiger Reserve in southern India recorded courtship and mating activity distributed across the calendar with no strong seasonal pattern at all. Where prey is abundant year-round, tigers do not appear to wait for a season. The chemical system runs continuously, and any month can produce a receptive female and a male capable of reading her signal in time. A third, quieter misconception is that a scent mark is a single message, left once and read once, the way a note pinned to a door might be. It is closer to a rolling broadcast. Both sexes refresh their marks along the same travel routes every few days, regardless of reproductive state, which means a male passing the same tree twice in 1 week is not rereading old information. He is checking for an update. The 40-plus compounds Brahmachari cataloged and the 32 volatiles Soso and Koziel later isolated do not describe one fixed signal, but a constantly rewritten one, closer to a status update than a letter. And a tiger that stops checking for even a few weeks is, in a very literal chemical sense, out of date. None of this changes what actually happens when a receptive pair finally does meet after successfully closing that distance. What matters for the story is not the physical act itself, which passes in seconds and repeats itself for days, but everything the tigers had to solve chemically before it could happen at all. Reading a forecast instead of a fact, racing its decay, risking a rival's blade-sharp claws over the same fading trail, and surviving a courtship that could still be refused in its final hour. Of the 2 or 3 females inside a typical male's territory, in any given cycle, only one is briefly fertile, for perhaps 3 to 6 days out of several weeks, and the male has to be reading the right scent mark at the right hour to know it at all. Multiply that narrow, decaying window by the tiger's already collapsed population, isolated across fragmented forest reserves separated by farmland, roads, and villages, and the chemical system this species relies on starts to look less like a curiosity and more like a bottleneck.
Camera trap surveys across India, Nepal, and Russia's Far East now track individual tigers by stripe pattern for exactly this reason. In habitat this fractured, knowing whether a male's territory still overlaps a fertile female's range at all is no longer guaranteed. Fewer than 5,000 tigers remain across the wild today, spread thin across forest fragments that were, within living memory, one continuous range. Every one of the complications this system has always carried, a decaying signal, a rival reading the same trail, a window that lasts days instead of weeks, a chemical broadcast that a mother cannot switch off even when she would rather avoid the male reading it, existed long before roads and farmland cut that range into islands. What has changed is the distance a signal now has to survive before the right nose finds it, and how often, in a fragmented landscape, there simply is no male within range to read it at all. Somewhere tonight, in a forest reserve in central India, or along a river valley in the Russian Far East, a male tiger will lower his head to a scrape mark left by a female he has never met, and read, in a language with no sound, exactly how many days he has left to find her. He will not get a second forecast. Whatever he decides in the next few seconds, standing over a patch of disturbed earth with his lip curled back, is very likely the only chance either of them will get this season. and neither one of them will ever know how close or how far they came to missing it entirely.